Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this pretty sad Thursday afternoon. It's raining, and I'm going to have to walk to school in the rain, so that's going to be fun. Not really, but, at least there's football tonight, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in the first segment. We're going to be looking at the Steelers going up against the Browns. As you guys know, this is a pretty intense, I guess you could say, intense rivalry between these two teams. I just know that they do not like each other, specifically the Browns not liking the Steelers, and I think it's gonna be a pretty solid game. And I'm going to go ahead and just give my thoughts on this game. As we know, it's a division rivalry, and we all love those division rivalries, don't we? So that's going to be the first segment. Then in the second segment, we are going to talk about the NBA changing their All-Star format yet again, and this time it was confirmed. I didn't want to talk about it when it was just rumors, so I just wanted to make sure that it was confirmed before I talked about it, and it seems like at least Shams tweeted out 20 minutes ago that it was definitely going to happen. So I think now would be a good time to talk about that in the second segment. Next, in the third segment, we're going to talk about Paul George getting injured again in last night's matchup. So what can go wrong will go wrong with Philly, apparently. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to talk about Mike Evans making his return in week 12, I believe this week is for the NFL, and we are just going to, talk about the implications of Mike Evans and just my overall opinions on him. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter segment to make up for the time in the fifth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested in figuring out what that is. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or just something that you guys are dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go right ahead and get into this Thursday night football prediction. As I said before, the two teams that are going to be matching up against each other are the Steelers and the Browns. One team plays really, really bad and somehow finds ways to win. The other team plays really, really bad and just cannot find ways to win. And I'm sure you guys can easily tell which team is which based on the records. The Steelers are 8-2 right now, and the Browns are 2-8 right now. I completely expected that the Steelers would finish in around 500 and would finish with most likely a positive record this season, but I did not expect their record to be this positive this early in the NFL weeks. I did not expect them to have this good of a record in week 11 going into week 12. But I mean, this is the Steelers that we're talking about. The Steelers team, it doesn't matter how bad they play football. It doesn't matter how bad they play offense. It doesn't matter what they're doing wrong on offense. This is a team that, regardless of how bad it is, finds a way to win games. And whether it be through their defense, whether it be through their special teams, whether it be through something outside of offense, they always find ways to win games. It is incredible what the Steelers can do and the wins that these Steelers can pull off. And the fact that they were able to win the last two games that they've played without scoring a touchdown makes me very, very jealous. In fact, it makes me super jealous. The last few games that they've played, their offense was absolutely horrible. I mean, in the last game against Washington, they did get a lot of touchdowns coming in from the Commanders, going against the Commanders, But there have also been several games where they just don't really they don't really score any touchdowns. And excuse me, allergies. But and sickness. But aside from that, I mean, this team they're really, really good. And they just find ways to win. And they won last game against the Ravens without scoring a single touchdown. They won on nothing but field goals, giving me an extreme PTSD because, the Giants earlier in the season lost to nothing but field goals. And it was a really heartbreaking loss. Similar to how this Ravens losing to the Steelers is also a heartbreaking loss in last week because for some reason Lamar Jackson, he just can never beat the Steelers. The Steelers always seem to have a number on Lamar. But regardless of that, this Steelers team is unbelievable. Like, the fact that they've been this good and, well, not really this good, this solid of a team for so long under Mike Tomlin is incredible. And the Browns, they really, really cannot stand that. I mean, for the last few years, they've basically dominated the Browns, aside from that one year when Baker Mayfield just destroyed them in the postseason and the team got really angry and decided to beat the Ben Roethlisberger-led Steelers. And it was a bad send-off for Ben Roethlisberger in that retirement year. But again, that team, I believe they started out 11-0, and they were really expected to, be a very solid contending team. Then they dropped a couple games late in the weeks, and they could not make it past in the wild card matchup against the Browns because the Browns basically beat them in the entire first quarter. But this is not the same story for the Browns. Now, as I said before, this Browns team, they play ugly and they just don't win games. It's similar to the Steelers, how they can play ugly at times, but the difference is that the Steelers, they're able to win games, whether it be by their defense or their special teams. In fact, Minkah Fitzpatrick, the safety for the Steelers, actually played at my high school when in New Jersey, and he obviously, he graduated from Alabama, so of course he's great, but, there's some ties over there. And I really think that the Steelers team is easily going to beat this Browns team. This Browns team is very, very bad. And for as inconsistent as the Steelers have been offensively, I don't think that's going to really be much of a problem against the Browns. Regardless whether they have Chubb in the game or not, I'm not entirely sure exactly what his status is, but I genuinely think that the Steelers team is easily going to be able to beat them. And they're just a team that finds ways to win. And it's a very rare sight that you find a lot of these teams. Like, this was, at least in my opinion, it's sort of the same sort of weirdness that Tom Brady with the Patriots had. So it's like, it didn't matter how bad the offense would be for the first 3 quarters on Tom Brady's team, regardless whether it be on the Bucs or whether it be the Pats. But they would play some really bad offense, and they would still find ways to win games because their defense is just that elite. Like, that entire first year with Tom Brady at quarterback, you could argue, that offense was absolutely terrible when it was led by Tom Brady. In fact, like, when in Tom Brady's first Super Bowl win, in that entire playoff series, he's led his offense to just 9 points per game. But they were still able to go all the way and win a Super Bowl, and they just were able to find ways to win, disrupting the other team's offense. They completely slowed down the greatest show on turf, and they also benefited with a pick 6. So it's like they just do things that allow the team to win. And I previously said before that one of the most underrated things in football, but probably some of the most important things in football, is being able to block and being able to tackle. And if you are able to do both of those things, chances are you are going to be able to win a lot of football games. And this is what the Steelers team does most of the time. Regardless of how bad their offense can play, they always seem to find ways to win. We saw it against the Ravens. They were able to tackle. They were able to force Derrick Henry to fumble, which is like a 1 in a million opportunity. That was like a 1 in a million chance of that even happening. The last time Derrick Henry fumbled was like forever ago. It was so many days that I don't even remember the exact number, but it was a very, very long time since Derrick Henry last fumbled up until that game. It's just, it's weird. Like, we joke about well, not we, like me, but the media, they like to joke about the Chiefs having devil magic and the Chiefs just finding ways to win. The Steelers do more or less the exact same thing in finding ways to win. Difference may be that the Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, the quarterback situation is a little bit, seems to be playing a little bit better. I mean, Russell Wilson has only been playing a few games with the Steelers, and he's undefeated with them, throwing 6 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, which is not a better, it's a slightly better touchdown to interception ratio than Patrick Mahomes, and we know that Patrick Mahomes has been very, very, very inconsistent in this season. He's nowhere near the same monster that we saw him in his first 2 or 3 years in the NFL. And it is a little bit concerning, at least for me, because I really do like Patrick Mahomes and I really do like his play and how he plays football. But a lot of people, they like to say that the Chiefs, they have that devil magic, and they have like it doesn't matter. It's weird. It's insane how they're able to win these games. And, I mean, the Browns, again, they don't really have that. They don't have a way to win games regardless of which quarterback situation they have, whether it be Deshaun Watson, whether it be Jameis Winston. I mean, they both have their problems. I mean, they only scored 14 points against the Saints and got destroyed. Then they only scored 10 points against the Chargers and also got destroyed. And they were able to somehow beat the Ravens 29-24, but I think that was more of a fluky win than the Browns actually being a solid team. So for this matchup, I'm sticking with my gut, and I'm sticking with the Steelers. And let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you guys think maybe this is the game that the Browns would upset the Steelers, but I completely doubt that, as history has proven to be rather consistent so far in these division rivalries. So with that being said, that's all that I have for the first segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the second segment, where I talk about the All-Star format and I give my opinions to the best of my understanding, because it is a new thing and I only have to go off of like tweets from Shams and a lot of other reports and how the formatting is going to be. So I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the All-Star change and the format of the All-Star game being changed slightly, actually dramatically now that I think about it. Before I begin, excuse me, I do have a stuffy nose. I apologize for that. I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share, we're all ears. And if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then use Super Chat. You just click the $ sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. or you can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this second segment, which is talking about the All-Star Game and their format being changed. So the talks about this format change, they've been going on for a while, and I did not want to talk about it because I thought they were just rumors, and I didn't expect the change to happen immediately for this season. But turns out that's exactly what's happening, and in this tournament, because now it's not an all-star game, it's a tournament now. So the way that it's going to work is that there are going to be, apparently, the talks have stated that there were going to be 3 all-star teams, each of them with 8 players on the roster, and the 4th team in this format would also include the winner of the Rising Stars Challenge, which have used a tournament-style format since 2022. So it seems like, the NBA is really, starting to get into, a tournament phase. I mean, you have the in-season tournament, and now you have the All-Star tournament, and it's there's a lot of tournaments going on. And obviously this is to try and make not just the regular season a bit more competitive, but now to make the All-Star game a bit more competitive. I mean, the All-Star game has been snoozeville recently. I mean, it's literally just teams trying to throw lobs, trying to be flashy, not really putting much effort in on offense or on defense, and there's no real competitive nature in these All-Star games anymore. And there's more merit to be selected than there is to actually participate in these All-Star games. And obviously, the NBA tanks in viewership because not many people are really going to want to tune in to a game where players are just throwing up alley-oops to each other, and a game where there's no competitiveness, no defense, because it's really just lob on one end, half court shot coming in from the other end, then another half court shot coming back, and maybe just another lob, and just sprinkling some more lobs in there. It's really it's very, very uncompetitive, and the NBA elects to change that. So this tournament style, while I do think it's a little bit odd, I'm not really used to this, I also think that this might actually work. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's imagine if the Rising Stars beat a team loaded with all-star talent. Those all-star players are never going to be able to live that down, losing to a bunch of Rising Stars players. So they're most likely going to try to take the game much more serious than the rest of the All-Star form, how the All-Star format was handled in previous years, trying to draft its own players. I honestly thought that that system was very weird. When Giannis was the team captain for the East, LeBron was the team captain for the West, and they would draft and pick certain players in the All-Star pool to see which one would be on their starting lineup, which one would be on their bench. It was pretty cool in the beginning, but I just thought it was bad. I really did not like that. The players selecting their own players. I was not a big fan of that at all. Maybe that's what's going to happen for this 4-team. For these 3 teams, maybe they're going to go ahead and pick the players voted by the fans, the top players voted by the fans, and they'll select their team. I don't know how that's exactly going to work, but the game itself and the style of this new format itself, I think it's going to make it a little bit more competitive because no one is going to really want to lose to a bunch of Rising Stars kids. Imagine LeBron losing to in the Rising Stars competition. People who didn't even take the All-Star game seriously are going to start taking it seriously. And by people, I mean the fans. They're going to start taking it seriously just to clown LeBron. You all can see it now. I can see it now. If LeBron loses to a Rising Stars team, that is going to be really, really bad. And it's going to be a bad look for him because, all of the fans are going to be like, oh, LeBron lost to the Rising Stars. Wow, he's old, this, that, and the other. We all know how that's going to go. And the way that these, at least according to Shams, because Shams tweeted this out 50 minutes ago, and there's going to be 2 semifinal games, up to 40 points. So obviously the NBA is trying to avoid from running up the scoreboard like how it was in the previous All-Star game. I mean, I'm actually going to look at the score for the last All-Star game. Last All-Star game score, because there was a lot of scoring in this game and very little defense. Yeah, I mean, the last All-Star game, the Western Conference, they scored 186 points, and the Eastern Conference scored 211 points. There was no defense being played all day in this game, and the box scores look absolutely ridiculous in this game too. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns ended the game with 50 points. SGA ended with 31 points, and Kevin Durant, he ended with 18 points. Steph Curry ended with 16. And then over in the Eastern Conference, Giannis ended with 23, Tatum ended with 20, Tyrese Halliburton ended with 32, Dame ended with 39, Jaylen Brown ended with 36. It was just like ridiculous. It was ridiculous, the stats. Each team took 146 shots, or around that number, and they all made around 80 of them, and they made 55. That's 55%. Like, there was barely any free throws as well, surprisingly, considering how Joel Embiid was supposed to be on that roster, but there was not many free throws. Oh my goodness, like, what a surprise. But again, like, Joel Embiid actually wasn't in this roster. I apologize for that. I forgot he was injured in that year. But there was barely any defense being played all day. And the NBA clearly wants to amend that, because that box score, 211 to 186, is absolutely ridiculous. And so the 4 teams, the 2 semifinal games are going to be up to 40 points, and then the winners advance, and then the final game is going to be up to 25 points. It really should have been up to 24 because, Kobe Bryant, but I digress. And that sounds pretty awesome, in my opinion. It sounds like it's a pickup game, and who doesn't like pickup basketball? I'm sure we all, at some point in our lives, have played pickup basketball before, and those can get really, really competitive at times, especially when it's like, if one player, if one person shoves you in pickup, you're going to probably try extra hard on offense and try extra hard on defense, and then all of a sudden the game gets very, very competitive because you don't want to lose. And I mean, when the All-Star players are going up against the Rising Stars players, I wouldn't be surprised if that attitude is held the same way, and they're not going to want to lose either. And on top of that, these games will be quick. It's not like it's going to be full quarter games. Again, these games are going to be up to 40 and 25 points respectively. So there's not really going to be much fear with these players getting injured, I don't think, because the games are going to be shorter and it's just going to be a pickup game. So that, at least that's the way I see it. I think this is a pretty solid format. I think it'll make it more competitive. It's going to be cool for maybe 1 year, and then it's probably going to lose some viewership again later when teams aren't really going to take it that seriously. But we'll see how this works. We'll see if it can stay competitive. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Maybe you guys don't like the idea of changing the All-Star format, because no matter what you do, the All-Star format is going to, or the All-Star game is going to be not as competitive as any regular season games or in-season tournament games for that matter. But we'll see how that goes. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. So that being said, that's the end of the second segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the third segment, where we talk about the 76ers, this time in regards to Paul George, the other member of the big 3 for the 76ers. I use air quotes because they're absolutely horrible this season. And he got hurt again. So I'll be right back after the short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we're going to be looking at the 76ers once again. Paul George, he got injured again. And this happened last night against the Grizzlies. The 76ers, they matched up against the Grizzlies. They ended up losing. Of course they did. And it was a pretty close game. The final score was 117 to 111. Joel Embiid, he had a solid game. He ended with 35 points and 11 rebounds and was the only bright spot on offense aside from Jared McCain, who's been a very, very impressive rookie, might I add. And, you know, a lot of people, they might not like him because he paints his nails. I mean, he can hoop, so it really doesn't matter what he does with his nails. I mean, he could paint them whatever color he wants as long as he keeps shooting the ball. He ended with 20 points in this matchup. And he was playing very well in the last few games and was the only real other offensive star in this matchup because Maxey, he was really bad in this game. It's kind of ironic how the reports of Maxey calling out Joel Embiid, they leaked on Monday, and then afterwards, when he returns in his game, he goes 3 for 13 and is one of the big reasons why the Sixers ended up losing in this game. A little bit ironic. But, again, that's just how the 76ers are. They are, right now, the worst team in the entire, not just the Eastern Conference, but I believe in the entire NBA, and by far the most disappointing team in the entire NBA. If you remember my predictions from earlier in this NBA season, I thought that this big three that they call themselves would have been a formidable team in the Eastern Conference. And I'm personally glad that I was proven wrong because I'm not a really big fan of the 76ers. I'm not a big fan of Joel Embiid. I do not like Joel Embiid's game whatsoever. I also don't like how he tends to deflect a lot of the blame, especially when he loses. I just don't like his character. I don't like his game. That's just my personal opinions. And he's been around mediocre. This was the first good game that he's had this season. Of course, he took 14 free throws in this matchup and made all 14 of them. Funny thing is that he actually flopped on a free throw. I'm sure he was doing that just for jokes and things like that. But again, this was a pretty sad loss for the 76ers. A big reason for that was because of Maxey and his poor performance. But another loss that the Sixers had in this game was losing Paul George yet again. So the big three, this was the first game that all three of them actually played together. Maxey, Joel Embiid, and Paul George. And they only were able to last up to one half. After once the second half started, and early in the second half, Paul George went down with an injury. He went down with a left knee hyperextension and was not going to return for the night, as Shams tweeted out at 10:03 p.m. And he left Wednesday's game. They ended up losing and to the Grizzlies 39 seconds into the second half after, literally 39 seconds into the second half, he hyperextended his knee, which is just, it's really, really bad. And the Sixers, this has just been the issue with the Sixers for the longest time. The inability to stay healthy, primarily with Joel Embiid and in the postseason. It's like almost every single postseason that these, in almost every single postseason, the Sixers, they always have to worry about Joel Embiid not playing in the postseason. He's only had one healthy postseason series in his entire career. And that's been the biggest problem with the 76ers, also on top of the fact that Joel Embiid's offense tends to wander in the playoffs, primarily because of his injuries and also because of his style of play. But regardless, this is an incredibly disappointing team. And, I mean, he was also out early in this season. I mean, he did not play in the preseason because of an injury as well. And it eventually led to a bone bruise that kept George out for 3 weeks and the first 5 games of the season. And it's not like he was playing good in a lot of these games either. And it wasn't like he was playing good in this game either. He finished 1 for 6 shooting in the first half with 2 assists and 4 rebounds. And after he left, Philly was able to cut the Grizzlies' 10-point lead to 4 after a 3-point flurry from George's replacement, Gershon Yabusele. And everyone knows who that guy is. He's the guy who dunked on LeBron. And still, they trailed by 9 after 3 quarters, and they ultimately ended up losing. This could not have been a more disappointing start to a season for the Sixers. And this really you could say it's karma for Paul George, or you could say, like, depending on what your standings are, whether you're a Clippers fan or whether you're just, like, you don't really like Paul George because of what he has to say sometimes. Paul George on his podcast, and he's been known to say these things but not really like hold up to his word. He said he wanted to be a Laker when he joined the Clippers. He said he always wanted to be a Clipper. He said he wanted to retire with the Clippers, and now here he is signing a huge contract with Philly. And all of these talks on his podcast and all of these talks towards the media, I mean, this is a very unlucky situation for Paul George, because it's like he joined the 76ers not just to get paid, but also to be in contention for a title. And now here are the 76ers dead last in the entirety of the Eastern Conference. And you see the Clippers and how they're playing. I mean, addition by subtraction. They're doing much better without Paul George and even without Kawhi Leonard. They recently won a game against the Magic. They beat them in a blowout. And again, this Magic team, while I will say they are also suffering from an injury, and with Paolo Banchero, the Clippers, they are also suffering from an injury as well without Kawhi Leonard. So neither team is 100%, and both are more or less evenly matched, in my opinion. Like, it cancels each other out. I saw a lot of people on the internet, they were saying, congratulations Clippers, you beat an unhealthy Magic team, and completely forgetting that the Clippers aren't healthy either without Kawhi Leonard. And let's see, looking at their standings, right now they're 8th in the entirety of the Western Conference, and the Western Conference is very, very competitive. There are 3 teams that are 9-7 in the Western Conference, and when you look at the Eastern Conference, there's only 1 team that's 9-7. And the rest of the teams that are in playoff contention, the Heat, the Pistons, the Hawks, the Nets, the Bucks, they just miraculously started to go into playoff contention. I still don't think the Bucks are going to do anything in the postseason. That is an overrated team with an overrated head coach and an overrated assistant coach. But regardless, all of those teams that I just mentioned, along with the Pacers, who are all in playoff contention, are negative. They are not positive whatsoever. The only teams that are positive in the entirety of the Eastern Conference are the top 4 teams: the Cavs, the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Orlando Magic. And the rest of the teams are negative. Meanwhile, over in the Western Conference, if you are negative, you are essentially completely out of playoff contention. And there is only around 6 teams that are negative in the entirety of the Western Conference. From the 9th seed all the way up to the 1 seed, every single team in the West is positive. It's a very, very competitive Western Conference. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that was a big reason why Paul George decided to go to an Eastern Conference team, so that way the competition would be a little bit easier and the road to the playoffs would be a little bit easier. But so far, that has not been the case whatsoever. They're 2-12. It has been unbelievably bad for the 76ers. The fact that their record is worse than the Washington Wizards is really, really bad. The Wizards, they had no expectations, and this was sort of where I expected the Wizards to be. But the 76ers, I thought that the Sixers team was going to be a top team in the Eastern Conference, and the biggest issue was whether or not they'd stay healthy. I did not expect the injuries to affect them this early, and I did not expect their season to tank so far this early in the season at all. And it's really unfortunate because they did a great job in drafting Jared McCain. Like, one of the biggest sleeper picks in the entirety of the draft, and he's been playing very, very well. He's been playing better than the first overall pick in this draft. He's been playing better than the second overall pick in this draft, the sixth overall pick in this draft, the third overall pick in this draft. Like, he's been playing better than every single one of those picks. And it's unbelievable. Like, just how ridiculous that the Sixers season has unfolded. And it's just full of drama. There was also a report going around that Joel Embiid was really, really, really mad at whoever leaked the information going on in regards of the team meeting, and that the issue with him being late was blown out of proportion. I mean, you know, whatever he says, I guess, obviously, it's like he's not going to take accountability for him being late. He didn't even mention taking accountability for him being late, but it's whatever. I mean, that's Joel Embiid, that's their standards. I don't know what's going on in Philly, but clearly it's nothing good. And don't expect them to win anything anytime soon with the roster that they have, and don't expect them to win anything. I mean, this is just proof that the NBA is changing. Now teams are starting to realize that you cannot win a bunch of games in the regular season, and you cannot be title contenders just by putting in a team of 3 all-star players on the roster. You just cannot do that. And it's a trend that was really popular when the Warriors were contending, you know, with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. But the difference was that team was too good to fail. And now teams are starting to realize you need competent role players, and you need these role players to be able to do something and be able to perform when your stars aren't performing, because that's a big problem with this 76ers team. It's like the stars, sometimes they're going to perform, sometimes they're not going to perform. And even when they perform, you know, Joel Embiid dropping 35, there's a chance that somebody else in the All-Star mix is not going to perform. Tyrese Maxey, who ended the game with just 8 points. It's, you know, it's like, it's really difficult to create a team now with just 3 All-Star caliber players. Like, you can't do that anymore. And this is just living proof of that. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of the 76ers. Do you guys think that they're going to bounce back? Do you guys think that they're going to still make the postseason in the incredibly weak Eastern Conference? Let me know in the comments what you guys think, because the season is still young in the NBA. But aside from that, we're going to go into a break and then get into the 4th segment where we talk about Mike Evans and his potential return from injury. He's expected to return against the Giants this week. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, I'm going to be talking about Mike Evans and his expectations to return in Week 12. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter segment because I do want to save time for the 5th segment, which is going to be a little bit longer. I'm pretty sure it's going to be longer, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Towards the end of this segment, I'll reveal what that 5th segment is going to be. And let's go ahead. Let's talk about Mike Evans. In my opinion, Mike Evans is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the entire history of the NFL. There's never been a single season where Mike Evans has recorded less than 1,000 receiving yards. Most likely, this will be the season where that happens, but there's going to be an asterisk on that because he was injured for a wide margin of this season, and some important games in the season as well. So it's most likely that he won't continue that streak. But again, I think a lot of people and a lot of fans are going to put an asterisk on that because, again, this is one of the most consistent wide receivers in the history of the NFL. And it pains me to see how his popularity, it wasn't all that high before Tom Brady got on Tampa Bay. He was a fantastic wide receiver. But then when Tom Brady got on Tampa Bay, he was getting all of the credit for turning this team into a Super Bowl contending team, when from what I saw, this team was just, before Tom Brady got there, they were just one quarterback away from being able to make it deep into the postseason. And before I continue with this Mike Evans, I might as well go ahead and talk a little bit about what I mean by that. So in that year before Tom Brady, the Bucs were 7-9. And obviously, when Tom Brady got there, the narrative was like Tom Brady turned this team into a contender team, when it's just false, because they were 7-9 despite their quarterback throwing a career number of interceptions. Jameis Winston, who is the quarterback for the Browns now, threw 9 more interceptions that year than any other player. And despite all of those interceptions, the Bucs were still very, very close to winning close games. And one game that immediately comes to mind is that they were lost to the Giants in that season after their kicker missed a chip shot field goal that most likely would have won the game. And they also lost in 2 overtime games where the score was really, really close. The Buccaneers' offense in that year before Brady got there was 9th in points per drive, and they were also 11th in yards per drive. And despite Jameis Winston throwing all of those interceptions and turnovers, he still led the league in passing yards, and he also was top 2 in passing touchdowns. So that Tampa Bay team was much better than their record and very, very talented. And all they needed was a good quarterback to get them over the top. And part of that talent and part of that talented roster, on top of adding Gronkowski and Antonio Brown, was Mike Evans, one of the most underrated receivers in all of NFL history. And then he gained some popularity with Tom Brady, and then afterwards he did not gain enough popularity as I thought this coming season, aside from his injury or in the previous seasons when Tom Brady was out. But he's been an incredibly consistent receiver, one of the best in this era by far. And he got injured earlier in this season. The Bucs are now 4-6, and despite being 4-6, they still have a shot of being able to win their division. And now they have an even better shot with Mike Evans expecting to return on week 12. Todd Boyles, he told reporters this on Wednesday, and this is going to be in a return against the Giants. And of course, you guys already know how I feel about the Giants. And regardless whether Mike Evans would play in this game or not, I still think that the Bucs are going to beat the Giants. The Giants are just an awful team. And despite the fact that Daniel Jones isn't going to be starting in this game, thank the Lord, I don't really expect Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlass, whatever you want to call him, I don't expect him to really provide much of a boost for this team, and I really don't expect him to win this game. And I also hope he doesn't win this game, because if he does, then this would really, really affect the draft stock. But again, Mike Evans, he had a hamstring injury, which was really, really bad, and those hamstring injuries they tend to linger sometime. And the news would be it was great news for their quarterback Baker Mayfield, who relied heavily on Mike Evans and was a trusted target since arriving in Tampa a year ago, and has been forced to find new avenues since the loss of Evans and Chris Godwin in week 7. They both ended up losing those two rather respectable players. And he's The tight end, however, for Tampa Bay, Cade Otton, he benefited from getting a lot of targets from Baker Mayfield in this game since Mike Evans was off the field. And according to Mayfield, he's liking what he's seen from Evans recently. In a quote, "From what I can see, good. Just talking to him. He seems really positive about it," Mayfield said of Evans, who was limited in practice on Wednesday. And you guys know Mike's a pro. He's going to do everything he can to get back out there with us and fight for this team as we take it one game at a time. And they ended up, this is like, now would not be, it would be no better time for Mike Evans to return than now. Because the Bucs, they recently faced 2 straight losses in, I believe they were division losses as well. They lost to the Falcons. And the NFC South were it's still up for grabs. I mean, the Bucs, they're going to trail the Falcons by 2 in the win column and in the standings, and can move within a game with a victory on Sunday, with Atlanta being on its bye week. So this is a very, very important game for the Bucs, and they really need to win this one. And if they win this one, this could propel them into leading the division and ultimately hosting a home playoff game. So we'll see how it goes. A home wildcard game, excuse me. We'll see how this goes. But that's all that I really have on this 4th segment. Again, it was going to be a much shorter segment because we still have to see whether or not. But he's expected to return this Sunday. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the 5th and the final segment, which is going to be a recap of all of these NBA games, as well as my predictions going into tonight's games for the NBA. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the 5th and the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we're going to be doing a little recap of all of the games that went down in yesterday for the NBA. I didn't do predictions for these games, I don't think. And so I don't really have a, prediction to fall back on, in these podcast segments. So you're just going to have to take my word for whether or not I picked these teams to win or whether or not I did not pick these teams to win. So, at least, not that I remember. I mean, let me know in the comments if I did one of those for this week. I don't think I did. I do not remember doing predictions for these games that were coming up later today. No, I did not. Yeah, I didn't. I would have had them written down. But anyways, let's go right ahead and get into this final segment. So the Warriors, they ended up playing the Atlanta Hawks in this matchup. The Warriors, they've been an incredibly solid team, and I completely expected them to win in this matchup. They just destroyed the Hawks 120-97. Ridiculous game coming in from Golden State, and Dyson Daniels, for once in his, in his NBA career, he ended the game without a steal. It's very rare that we see Dyson Daniels not record a steal in this game. He's a defensive monster, but no one on the Hawks really played nearly as well as they should have to win this game Trae Young, he ended with 12 points and 11 assists. Zachary Rasacher, he ended with 12 points, and he did shoot 4 for 10, but again, very, very mediocre. Bogdanovic, he ended up shooting 2 for 14, and was really, really bad for the team in this one. Trae Young was also really inefficient, 4 for 12, 1 for 6 from 3. And let's see, Jalen Johnson, he ended with 6 for 16 on 15 points. The Warriors, on the other hand, despite Steph Curry only dropping 23 points and recording 8 assists, they still were able to win rather comfortably in this game. Andrew Wiggins ended with 27 points, and this Warriors team, I don't know what is in the water, I don't know what's in the Gatorade, I don't know what they're drinking, but they are always in some talks of being able to win, and I genuinely cannot stand it. I don't get how Steph Curry gets this lucky with a very incredible team that he has. I don't get it. Like, you would not expect a roster with Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, good players, by the way, Lindy Walters, Trace Jackson Davis, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Kyle Anderson, Kevin Looney, Gary Payton II. You would not expect a team like this to be 11-3. You would not. You just would not. And with Steph Curry only averaging 24 points per game, you definitely don't expect this team to be a solid team. But here they are, top 2 in the Western Conference. I don't understand how they do it. I genuinely don't know what's in the Gatorade. I don't know how these people are doing it, but they're doing it. It's whatever, though. As you guys can tell, I am incredibly salty at this because I did not expect this team to be nearly as good as they are right now. But regardless, they ended up winning, as I expected them to. And the Knicks, they ended up matching up against the Suns. Without Kevin Durant, without Bradley Beal, I did not have much hope for the Suns in this matchup, and I proved to be correct. Even though Devin Booker ended the game with 33 points, he was incredible. The rest of the team just was not nearly as incredible, and that's sort of what happens when you don't have Kevin Durant. The team tends to slump. And this has been a trend for Kevin Durant so far in not just this season, but in previous seasons, especially with the Brooklyn Nets. The team would be on a hot streak, and then all of a sudden, Kevin Durant would get injured, and the hot streak would come to an immediate halt. And that's what's happening. And in this matchup, Jalen Brunson was ridiculous in this game, 36 points along with 10 assists. Was 12 for 21 from the field and 7 for 11 from 3. Just fantastic shooting. Karl-Anthony Towns also was fantastic in this game with 34 points and 10 rebounds, 12 for 19 from the field and 3 for 8 from 3. Josh Hart ended with a double-double, 19 points, 11 rebounds, as well as 3 steals. And the whole team, obviously, with the Knicks and their rotations and their great roster, they're great. They're just a great team. And 138 to 122 was the final score. And I expected the Knicks to be able to win despite, considering how the Suns were rather shorthanded. Now, the Cavs, they played the Pelicans. I expected the Cavs to win. Of course they did. That makes them 16-1. And they ended up winning 128 to 100 against the Pelicans. Surprisingly, Donovan Mitchell, he did not really play well. Garland did not play in this game, and they still won by 28 points. Thanks to a ridiculous performance from Ty Jerome, who ended with 29 points. I did not expect that at all. I expect that kind of performance from Mitchell. Mitchell only played in 20 minutes in this game, too, so let's hope he's not really injured. He went 4 for 10, ended with 10 points. And, regardless, they didn't really need him. Georges Niang, he ended 6 for 14, but recorded 20 points, 6 for 12 from 3. Jared Allen went flawless from the field, 7 for 7, and 2 for 2 from the free throw line, while also being able to record 11 rebounds along with that as well. Just an incredible team. And, of course, the Pelicans, they're also shorthanded. And even more shorthanded than usual, they did not have Brandon Ingram in this game. And not having Brandon Ingram is like, yeah, you're done. They did have Antonio Reeves, who ended the game with 34 points, but again, that just was not enough against this Cavs team. The Pelicans team shot 8 for 31 from 3. That's really all you need to know. The Bucks, in a shocker, ended up beating the Chicago Bulls. Finally, it seems like the Bucks are on track. They're 6-9 right now. Giannis ended with 41 points. Damian Lillard ended with 20 points and 10 assists. and Brook Lopez ended with 21 points. I was extremely disappointed in this team and how they've been playing early in the season, but maybe they've turned it around. I don't expect them to do much in the postseason thanks to Doc Rivers, but we'll see how this goes. Zach LaVine, he ended with 27 points, but again, just wasn't enough to stop Giannis Antetokounmpo in his ridiculous 41-point game. So yeah, that's really all she wrote in this one. This is how Bucks games should go. This is how they should be. I mean, obviously, with Giannis dropping 41 points, it should be near impossible for them to lose. But they found ways to lose with Giannis and Dame dropping 30. And it shouldn't be that Giannis Antetokounmpo is scoring all this much. They had two players in the starting lineup score 0 points. Taurean Prince, of course, he's playing 25-plus minutes. I don't know what is up with Darvin Ham, but Darvin Ham has this weird... I don't even know what it is. He has this weird relationship with Taurean Prince. This was the same deal when Taurean Prince was on the Lakers. For some reason, Darvin Ham would consistently play Taurean Prince, despite the fact that Taurean Prince would have a negative plus-minus and be a detriment to the Lakers. I don't know why he keeps playing him, but he keeps playing him. And that trend continues with the Bucks, as, you know, Taurean Prince is on the Bucks and Darvin Ham is one of the coaches for the Bucks. I don't know why he's getting so much playing time, but not someone who's averaging 8 points and 5 rebounds and is a detriment to the team in the plus-minus should not be playing 25-plus minutes. I don't understand what the deal is with them. I really don't. But here we are with them again. Now, the Grizzlies, as I mentioned before, they beat the Sixers 117-111, so I won't talk about that game nearly as much. And, you know, I'm pretty sure I picked the 76ers to win in this one because I thought the Big Three was going to play really well, but of course they let me down. I really should not pick the 76ers ever again until they start getting consistent with their team. So that's what I get. And so I'm not really going to talk about this game much because, again, I already recapped it more or less. I mean, we all know Paul George left the game with an injury. Joel Embiid had 35. Tyrese Maxey did not really play well in this game. I didn't talk about much on the Grizzlies side, so I might as well go ahead and do that. Obviously, we know the Grizzlies were also shorthanded without Ja Morant, but regardless, they were able to get solid production from Jaren Jackson Jr. as well as Desmond Bane. Jaren Jackson ended with 25 and Desmond Bane ended with 21, so not really much that needs to be said. The Thunder, of course, they beat the Portland Trailblazers, despite the Thunder also being shorthanded and going with an incredibly small lineup where the tallest player is SGA. This game was never really in doubt. SGA ended with 28 points with 3 steals as well. Jalen Williams ended with 30 points and 8 assists along with 7 rebounds. And that was really all she wrote in this game. The three-point shooting on the Thunder wasn't all that great, 9 for 31, but they still were able to win by 10 points. And the Blazers, they shot 15 for 38, but still they just did not have nearly a dominant score like the Thunder did in this game with, you know, Jalen Williams with 30 and SGA with 28. The Rockets, they ended up playing the Pacers. The Rockets have been surprisingly good this for the start of this season. And as you guys know, I'm not a big fan of the Pacers. I think a team that lacks defense is an incredibly weak team, especially come postseason time. And Houston ended up proving that, right? They ended up winning 130-113. The Pacers' offense just has not been rolling nearly as effectively as it was before. A large part of that is because of, shockingly, Tyrese Halliburton, who ended the game with only 4 points and 11 assists despite playing 30 minutes. So he also went 1 for 7 from the field. And you guys still think he's better than Trae Young? I don't think so. And Trae Young did not play well either, but he did play a lot better than this. But again, they had Pascal Siakam, who ended with 21. They also had Quentin Jackson, who ended with 24. But again, the Rockets, they had a lot of firepower on offense, especially with Sengun dropping 31 and 12 and toying with Miles Turner in this game. Jabari Smith Jr. ended with 23 points, and that was really all she wrote when you have both of those players when you have this team having 102 possessions and 102 shot attempts. That's a very difficult team to beat because sometimes those shots are going to end up falling. And then finally, the Clippers, they matched up against the Orlando Magic. I thought that the Magic were going to be able to make this game a little bit more competitive, but they did not. The Clippers ended up winning 104-93. James Harden had 24 points. And let's see, Amir Coffey, he ended the game with 18 points. Zubac, he ended the game with 17 points and 12 rebounds. And, I mean, really, this team, addition by subtraction, they also did not have Norman Powell in this lineup, and they still were able to beat them. So, not having Norman Powell, not having James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and they were still able to beat the Magic that did not have Paolo Banchero. So, it was a pretty even matchup, in my opinion. The Magic, they went 8 for 35 from 3, so not really an ideal shooting percentage for them. Meanwhile, the Clippers went 11 for 22 on 50%. So that's really all she wrote in this game. And now we're going to go ahead into our predictions as we end off this fifth segment. So there's only going to be 4 games today, of course, because there's Thursday night football. Everyone's going to be tuning into football a little bit more than they're going to be tuning into basketball. And the Lakers, they're going to play the Magic. The Lakers are now the hottest team in the NBA right now. They have the biggest win streak in the NBA right now, and they're third in the Western Conference. Of course they are. I mean, JJ Redick. No one really expected JJ Redick to be this good as a coach. I knew he was going to be a solid coach. I mean, just if you hear him talk basketball, you know he knows his stuff. And this really just shows how bad Darvin Ham was. I'm going to say this every single time the Lakers win games and every single time the Lakers prove to be a competent team. And now with Dalton Knecht proving that he is a fantastic player, an above average rookie player, I guess you could say, because I don't want to jump the gun a little bit too much, but again, that performance against the Jazz was amazing. And he played really well against the Pelicans as well, and in the few days earlier before that game. And he's been really solid overall. So I think that a lot of teams are going to regret sleeping on him and not picking him up because he was drafted only at 17th overall in the first round, which is incredible how he fell to the Lakers. But it was a match made in heaven because JJ Redick, we all know JJ Redick's game. He was a straight-up shooter, shoot. He knows how to coach a shooter, and I think this is one of the best coaches for Dalton Knecht. And let's see. Yeah. So since Wednesday, November 6th, they ended up losing to the Grizzlies, but afterwards they won against the 76ers, they won against the Raptors, they won against the Grizzlies, they won against the Spurs, they won against the Pelicans, and they won against the Jazz. That is a 6-game winning streak, and I think it's going to turn to 7 after this matchup at home against the Orlando Magic. But we'll see how that goes. Next, the Pistons, they're going to play the Hornets. I'm actually going to pick Detroit in this matchup for the first time in forever. The Pistons, they are much better this season than they were in the last 2 years, and I somewhat think that they're going to have a little bit of an advantage in this matchup. Now, the Hornets, they do play at home, but I think the Pistons, they got this one. Now, the Timberwolves, they're going up against the Raptors. I think the Timberwolves are going to beat the Raptors in this one. And then finally, the Spurs are going up against the Jazz. I'm picking the Spurs in this matchup. I don't think that the Jazz are 3-11, easily one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. And I just don't have faith in the Jazz. I have more faith in the Spurs than I do in the Jazz. Aside from the 76ers, they are the worst team. The 76ers and the Wizards, I guess you could say, they are the worst team in the entire NBA. So those are my predictions. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. That is all that I have for today on this podcast. That's the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, a burning question, or anything that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, you can either use Super Chat or you can use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, GSMCpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way, which really help the show. That's all that I have to say for this final segment. That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to tune in to Thursday Night Football. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.